Now, I've spoken about this at some length. The People's Republic of China represent an absolute existential threat to our country. And whether the virus that savaged the world came from the Wuhan Institute of Virology or not, the Communist Party of China's allowance of international travel from that city, while permitting almost no internal travel from that source, is an absolutely unpardonable act. Our party must lead the way in demanding concrete answers concerning the origin of the virus that has caused such immense suffering and death. China nearly possesses the combination of wealth, strength, and population required to unseat the United States as the most powerful nation on earth. For an awfully long time, we counted on our military and other forms of power to maintain our preeminence. But these attributes are now in question. The Chinese Navy is ascendant. China has stolen $1 trillion in technology from the United States. The extent of this theft has enabled dramatic increases in the lethality of their arms. And so while we still hold an edge across all of our services, we must fundamentally improve our military procurement system, our means of technical education here in our schools at home, or our superiority may well vanish. I've seen this up close running that enormous bureaucracy we call our State Department. Waste, politics, irresolution, they have no place inside of these bureaucracies. Our procurement processes, certainly at most of the government, but deeply inside the Department of Defense, are marked by the development of weapon systems that produced an inadequate number of weapons, and weapons that were canceled before a single operational unit is fielded. This is frankly done to fool the public into believing that a new administration is saving money, when in fact the opposite is true. I must say that both parties stand guilty of this. In this century, tens of billions of dollars have been wasted. New tanks, dear to my heart, new tanks, howitzers, and helicopters canceled by the military branch in which I serve demonstrate this issue's enormity. Our weapons are only of use if we actually field them and put them in the hands of our amazing young men and women. The answer, and our party will have to leave this, is to tackle these big bureaucracies and create incentive-based restructuring of our defense and security procurement systems. We can't be apathetic. We have to make these changes to move forward. We must eliminate entire levels of bureaucracy. We should start with an office known. We should start with an enormous bureaucracy known as the Office of Secretary of Defense. I mean no harm to anyone who served there. It has now become politicized. I observe these things so close at hand at the Department of State. These institutions are bloated, they're unwieldy. I was accused of not protecting jobs at the State Department, and I was only saddened that I didn't get rid of more. I was operating in an environment that was unionized. I operated in an environment that was blatantly woke and dominated by the left. These bureaucracies must be brought to heel, because they must serve. And to be strong, we must never politicize or indoctrinate our military. We can't permit this to happen. We must enhance our alliances all across the world. We worked so hard to build coalitions that defeated ISIS and a big group called the Quad to push back on China. We did this alongside friends like Australia and Japan and India. You know, even before COVID, our media, our popular culture, our universities, and our international businesses had been forces for democratic development and market creation throughout the globe. But I must say this is no longer universally true. Today, China has infiltrated Hollywood and academia, our technology companies, and the conglomerates that control America's media publishing. Our strength, freedom, has been turned against us. Communist influence must be eliminated in our country, root and branch. This is something President Reagan knew. We began this work. It's why I shuttered something called Confucius Institutes that were at our universities, designating them as foreign missions. It's why I closed this crazy thing that the Chinese called the consulate in Houston, which was actually a den of spies. We must be fearless. We must be fearless, and our party must lead this. We must be fearless in imposing proportionate costs on Beijing Strength is what China understands, and today we're showing little of it. You know, China constructed its first overseas base in a place called Djibouti not too long ago. From that nation's location near southern approach to the Suez Canal, the Chinese Navy can affect our trade. Coupled with other regional redoubts, China, for the first time in history, is positioning itself as a global military power. And most crucially, China is empowering Iran, having inaugurated a multi-decade strategic partnership. Can anyone explain why we're sitting at a table with them in Vienna? You know, through this compact, we may be viewed as part of China's new imperialism known as the Belt and Road Initiative. The risk is treacherous. Terrorism, disintegration in the Middle East support the interests of both Beijing and Tehran, as well as the interests of Moscow. Because frankly, for China, terrorism instigated by Iran diverts American military capabilities. Iran's active nuclear weapons program compounds this danger and has been supported surreptitiously by China for decades. For Iran, its ties to the East constitute an invaluable source of technology, stolen first from the United States and then transferred from China to them. And China, too, represents a secure market for the oil that could otherwise be subject to embargo. A resurgent Iran now has a free hand to set loose the terrorists who constitute Hamas and Hezbollah. In just this short time, the administration has removed sanctions that we imposed to restart negotiations to limit what Iran will never willingly limit, its nuclear weapons program. This militant state threatens not only Israel and the world energy supplies, but the Arab states of the Gulf. We saw Hamas' recent assault on Israel. This would not have occurred if America's support for the Jewish state had not been altered by ambiguous statements and outreach to Israel's enemies. As we look forward, we need to remember what President Reagan did and what President Trump and I recognize too. America's relationship with Israel must be absolutely unshakable. If America and Israel act as one, the opponents of peace understand they will never attain victory. You know, before our administration, the status of Jerusalem always had been a diplomatic chess piece. Look at my predecessor's travels. All fine people, but how many times can you go from Jerusalem to Ramallah and back and not realize that this simply isn't going to work? We knew it. And so the eternal capital of the Jewish people became the home for the United States Embassy. Our decisive action there demonstrated determination. In doing so, it removed a key obstacle, which allowed the Abraham Accords to move forward. This saw 4 amazing leaders in 4 amazing Muslim-majority nations make a real peace with Israel. We, too, had American energy dominance absolutely at the center of how we thought about our foreign policy because it was critical to our efforts to ensuring peace and security in the Middle East. We have the amazing means. The Lord has blessed us to be a net energy exporter of fossil fuels and advanced fission power plants. Sadly, the production of American energy is now being dismembered. It's being dismembered on an altar of radical environmentalism. Does the left not know that a combination of fossil fuels and nuclear power is literally the only means to provide enough energy and clean water and sanitation for many cities in Africa, now experiencing exploding growth that can last for them throughout this next century? There is no alternative. By 2100, many of the nation's most populous countries and cities will be in Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa. It will comprise over 700 million people. And if energy supplies are inadequate, war, pestilence, extremism, and exodus will inevitably be the result, and it will come to the United States of America. Renewable sources of energy can only be supplementary, for their production, of course, is intermittent. And defacing once beautiful landscape, the blades of colossal windmills in states like mine in Kansas with wind farms eviscerates countless birds and the greatness of our nation. And even as our national symbol is not spared by these windmills, we know the real risk. Is this the line that environmentalism wants to draw? The line that it promised our country? Conservatives know that this is not the case. We know how to get safe drinking water and clean air. We've always been great stewards of our lands. We know this is true. We know new threats to America arise often. We've seen pandemics. We've seen genetic engineering on the rise. We've seen the effects of cyber warfare, power grid disruptions. We know what happens when artificial intelligence is in the hands of our adversaries. And in the coming months, I'll speak to each of these issues at great length and how conservatives should respond to those threats. But as I said earlier, vision. Vision matters. Vision is the key to meeting these and other challenges. Ronald Reagan, Mikhail Gorbachev established the foundations for International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor. You remember this? It doesn't get talked about much. It was done back in 1985. That seems like a long time ago, and for you young people, it seems like forever. This facility is now being built. This project will explore the production of fusion energy. And if successful, Ronald Reagan's vision, his vision, it will bring to this century the sun's power to our planet. Truly clean energy. Truly clean energy will actually exist in infinite supply. It required vision and imagination. He understood that this was exceptionalism. And since today in our government we find little of this type of prescience and grit, we must take back the House and the Senate and the presidency. We must win elections. And as a native of California, there's a governorship I'd like to see us get to. I want to close with a poem because you know all I'm such a great poet. This is a poem called The Ruin. It was written more than 1,000 years ago, and it records the remnants of Roman Britain. Roman Britain had been built centuries before that, but lost to time. The poem reads as follows. This masonry is wondrous. Fates broke it. Courtyard pavements were smashed. The work of giants is decaying. This must never be the future of America. Events may have pushed our nation into a furnace, but the book of Daniel tells us. The book of Daniel tells us the people of faith cannot be harmed by such a test. And so, with hands on our hearts, we will turn this glowing furnace into a forge. Within it, we will form our rendezvous with destiny. We will renew the dream. We will honor the past. We will chart a brave path forward. For in so doing, we will light the way. We will light the way for the entire world, just as President Reagan would have had it. Thank you, and God bless you all.